Well, we have a double fight card of note weekend because we have tomorrow Bellator versus PFL, Champions Series, if you will. And of course, we have UFC Mexico City, which they actually did a proper job of booking this time by making it mostly small fighters and not asking heavyweights and light heavyweights and middleweights to fight at altitude. That's smart. Let me get the anti-gambling spiel out of the way to begin with. Do not bet what you cannot lose on MMA. It is a fundamentally chaotic and unpredictable sport that random stuff will happen. And if you put a bunch of money on something to happen and it doesn't happen, you're out. And that's all there is to it. Can gambling be fun? Yeah. I put a little bit of money on basically every card. But know your limits, stay within them, and don't bankrupt yourself. There you go. I really should record that. That's the best I've gotten that out in probably ever. Let's talk about the Bellator card first up, because honestly, it won't take me that long. It's not that the Bellator card is not interesting. It is. It's got a lot of good fighters on it. I'm a big fan of Ryan Bader, Johnny Emblem, Patricio Pitbull, Jason Jackson, Vadim Nemkov. Bruno Capelosa is pretty fun. Henan Ferrari is pretty fun. Clay Collard, Jay McKee, pretty fun. Aaron Pico, underwhelming for what he was promised to be, but still fun. And Henry Corrales is I'm a big fan of Henry Corrales as well. It's got Clarissa Shields on it. It's got Biagio Ali Walsh, who I'm not especially interested in. I don't care who you're related to. I just don't. I don't care about who your family is as a fighter. I care about what you can do in the cage. And this is his pro debut. Maybe he will be good. And he's looked pretty good so far, don't get me wrong, but it's hard for me to get it's hard for me to get super into a guy who hasn't done anything. There you go. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting card, but it's just it's a lot of two true outcome fights. This is going to go one way or the other. And I don't mean that one guy's going to win, one guy's going to lose. No. I mean that the dynamic is very, very obvious. We'll start off with Ferrari versus Bader because it is the main event. The dynamic here is just basically this. Henan Problema Ferreira is 6'8", 85-inch reach, a huge man, a giant of a man. And he tends to knock people out. Obviously, he can do that to Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader is, been hurt before, regularly. He's been knocked out a couple of times. He's been seriously hurt in other fights. Obviously, he can, but he is the better fighter. He's the more structured striker. He is the far better wrestler and grappler. And he should be able to take Ferreira down because Ferreira doesn't avoid opportunities to take him down and put him on his back and do some control there and work his game and get the win. And I've got to pick Bader, but obviously him getting knocked out, totally on the table, totally possible. There you go. Co-main event, Impa Kasanganay versus Johnny Eblen. Johnny Eblen's going to win. Better, more formed striker. Honestly, it's the same things. It's just without the size thing because Kasanganay, well, he was fighting at 205. He is a 205 champion in PFL. He's a middleweight. We saw him at middleweight in the UFC. That's where he fits best. He's I think 5'11". Yeah, 5'11", 75-inch reach. He's not bigger than Eblem, I don't think. Eblem's 6'1", 74-inch reach. It might be a little bit bigger. Eblem's not huge, but yeah, Eblem goes in there, wrestles him to the ground. Either takes a decision or finishes him off with probably a submission. Kasanganay's pretty tough, and I think has only been finished by the ninja kick by Joaquin Buckley in terms of chin checks. No, he also got knocked out by Carlston Harris, which I think was at 170. Yeah, that was him. I think just cutting too much weight. Other than that, I think he's got a perfectly fine chin and probably goes the distance. But I could see Eblem winning by submission. But he's quite happy to take a decision win. Like he did beat Tokov, Musasi, Salter, Travis Davis, Taylor Johnson, Mauricio Alfonso, Chauncey Foxworth, all decisions. Like his wins by knockout are more about mistakes and like characteristics of the other fighter. Kasanganay is safe enough that he goes the distance. Patricio Pitbull versus Gabriel Alves Braga. I'm going with Pitbull. This one could be actually a lot closer. Pitbull has not looked good greatly. He's lost his last two out of 3 fights, I think. No, last 2 fights, right? But I don't know. I just don't think Alves really asks him a ton about. Like he's a 12-1 fighter. He's a good fighter. He's got like that standard like shoot a box style, but like he kind of is bringing Pitbull style to Pitbull, and I think the old man still has answers for that. So Pitbull by decision. Jason Jackson to beat Ray Cooper III. I have never been big on picking Ray Cooper. Don't get me wrong. Ray Cooper has wins, but he's a guy who just doesn't seem to take this terribly seriously. Like, I know he's beaten Brett Cooper. I know he's beaten Magomed Magakirimov. He's beaten Rory McDonald. He's beaten David Machat. He's beaten Chris Curtis. He's beaten Jay Shields. Pavel Kush, who I thought back in the day was pretty good. But like he also has losses to like really one-sided losses too, to like Jung Young Park and Magomed Kirimov and John Howard. I'm not really ever going to pick him. He hits really, really hard. He's got a puncher's chance. Obviously, anyone's got a puncher's chance, but he's got a very good one. But yeah, Jason Jackson is the bigger guy. Even though he's a welterweight, which is weird because Cooper fights at like 185 quite frequently. But like Jason Jackson's actually pretty good, like a pretty good athlete and a pretty well-constructed fighter. He should take the decision. Vadim Nemkov versus Bruno Capoloza. I'm going with Vadim Nemkov. It is him going up to 265. Capoloza is pretty big. So it's kind of like the Farah Bader fight, but like it's not nearly as physically different. Like Ferreira is like 6'8" and like massive. Capoloza is like 240 pounds, 6'2". Like he's probably, I don't know, at a guess, maybe like 10 pounds bigger than Vadim Nemkov. 10, 15 pounds maybe. No more than 15 pounds. And I think like in terms of height and reach, they're pretty close. Let's see. Nemkov, 6 foot, 76 inch reach. Capoloza, 6'2", 79. So yeah, he's got like 3 inches of reach, 2 inches of height. And let's go big and say 20 pounds. Like that's not unovercomable by Nemkov just being a better fighter. Thiago Santos versus Yoel Romero. Santos is shot. That's it, really. Like he's got power and whatever, but like despite Romero's age, by the way, what is the combined age here? Oh, 86 years. Oh boy. Despite being 46 years old, Romero is still only losing to like the absolute best and like in their prime fighters. Like it's still Nemkov, Davis, Adesanya, Paulo Costa in a war, and then Whitaker. That's his last 6 losses. In the meantime, he's beaten Melvin Manhoff, Alex Polize, Luke Rockhold. I know that's like 3 and 6, but like he went the distance with Nemkov. He went the distance with Izzy. He went the distance with Costa. He went the distance with Davis. He went the distance with Whitaker twice. Like you don't finish him. He's still somehow durable, and he's still incredibly dangerous in like the 3rd round. So yeah, 3rd round stoppage for Yoel Romero. Clay Collard, AJ McKee Jr. I'm going with AJ McKee Jr. I will say this. I always kind of underestimate Clay Collard because he's just such a boxer at 155, and that should not work. Like one of the deepest and most talented weight classes in MMA. And this guy who, realistically speaking, has one good skill set, continues to like win. I would assume McKee can take him down. I would assume McKee can work his wrestling. I would assume McKee can out-grapple him and out-scramble him because he's good at that. I would have to go with AJ McKee. Aaron Pico versus Henry Corrales is a rematch of a fight that Corrales has won in the past. Pico is the better fighter. Like this comes up like repetitively. Like there are, if you look at Aaron Pico's record, there's like no one that should have beaten him. Yet he does have losses to Zach Freeman. He does have losses to Henry Corrales, Adam Boric. Jeremy Kennedy was an injury loss, but still. He's just, I think, fundamentally not that durable. Like he's got 2 KO losses and then like the injury loss to Kennedy. Plus he got stuck in a guillotine against Zach Freeman. I don't know. He should win. Corrales is tough. Has Corrales like ever been finished? Kind of curious about this now. Got a bunch of losses. Split to Kai Kamaka. Okay, got submitted by Johnny Campbell. Cupcakes Campbell. Still amuses me greatly. But like decisions to Juan Archuleta, Darren Caldwell. I got submitted by Pitbull and by Daniel Strauss. Okay, so it's not quite as impressive as he's got 3 choke losses. I still will go with Pico by decision, but you never know. Pico seems to be the king of like randomly getting hurt in fights and finished it. So Corrales is definitely a live dog if he is a dog. We'll go over the betting odds in a sec. Baggio Ali Walsh will probably win. Clarissa Shields will probably win. I do not know anything about this Saudi Arabian fighters here that are fighting, but I assume that they are supposed to win, given that this is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Dan Hardy going to be... No, Dan Hardy's Tapology account. I was going to say, is he the commentator? But no. Anyways. Betting odds here. Bader is a very, very small favorite. I'll probably put... Ooh, hang on. You can get Bader at minus 106 on Unibet. I like it. I like a lot. Yeah, so I'd consider putting a little bit of money on Bader. You could put a little bit of money on Farah as well. Bader is actually largely the underdog. This is weird. Not everywhere, not universally. It's a pick and fight at Bet. In fact, he's the underdog everywhere except for Bet MGM. That is weird. Kasanganay versus Eblem is a do not bet. Eblem's like a minus 500 plus favorite, and Kasanganay is like plus 320 to 380. You could bet on the underdog, I guess. Like anytime someone gets like plus 300 odds, you could go there, but I would stay away from that. Similarly, I would stay away from the Pitbull versus Braga fight. It's pretty close. Pitbull's like minus 150 to minus 177. And then Braga is plus 110 to plus 140. So, realistically speaking, he's not a big enough underdog to really go with. I guess you could bet at Pitbull on those odds. Jason Jackson is a massive favorite against Ray Cooper. You could probably bet a Ray Cooper. Like, if you can get him at plus 490, which I'm seeing on DraftKings, yeah. I would stay away from Jackson. He's minus 649 at the lowest, and that's just not bettable. Sim with the Nemkov Kapaloza fight. Kapaloza is plus like 350 to 425, and Nemkov minus 520 all the way up to minus 600. Again, would avoid. You could vote on if you've got the feeling that Kapaloza is going to win. Like you go there, but I don't think that's going to happen. My underdog pick for this card, though, is I'm seeing on 2 books. Yoel Romero at plus 102 and 100 against Santos at minus 120, minus 122. Yeah, I'd vote. I'd bet on Romero. So I'm probably going to be betting on Bader and Romero. And then AJ McKee is a fairly large favorite, minus 275 to minus 305. Collard coming back at plus 188 to plus 245. Not interested. Pico is a prohibitive favorite, minus 400 to minus 480. Corrales plus 275 to plus 350. Might sprinkle something there. Clarissa Shields is super wide. Baggio Ali Walsh is super wide. I would stay away from the rest of it. So, my 3 bets I'm pondering. Bader probably will. Romero probably will. And I might put like $10 on Corrales. There you go. Okie dokie. Let's move on to the UFC card because that's what people tend to be here for It is the big name. It is the brand. It is the NFL. It is the NBA, only without the pay. UFC, Mexico City. Here we go. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval. Dose. We got double. We do have double rematches headlining the card, and I generally don't like that. Like, as a general rule, I do not care for that. It's always really, really fun to watch Brandon Royval fight. Don't get me wrong. There is not a single fight of his that I do not enjoy. It is controlled chaos, or weaponized chaos, I should say, designed to make you really, really uncomfortable on the feet and then grapple with him and scramble with him and get choked. And that is essentially his game plan, although he'll talk about how he really wants to be a striker a lot. His striking's not actually all that good. It's just he's 5'9" with a 70.5-inch reach at flyweight that most people are just deeply, deeply uncomfortable with exchanging with. But it's not all that interesting to break the fight down because I just kind of broke it down. Like, that's what he likes to do against everybody. And against Brandon Moreno, he's facing somebody who has a comparable reach, is 2 inches shorter than him, and is a far better striker. And a better grappler, and a better scrambler, I think. I'm not really putting a lot of stock into the first fight. At the end of the day, Royval hurt himself, popped his shoulder out, and that ended the fight, if I recall correctly. But Moreno was winning up until that point. I just see Moreno at some point getting a dominant position on him, applying a submission. That's kind of the thing, is that with Royval is that there's very, very few wins he has that are against somebody who can grapple at a high pace and level. Like, you look at it realistically, Pantoja beat him twice. Moreno beat him. Casey Kenny before he got to the UFC. And then, like, if you look at his, and then, like, Ricky Palacios, Nick Rousseau, but whatever. I'm not going back too far, but, like, you look at it, it's like, okay, Matthias Nicolau, a guy who is uncomfortable fighting at a high pace. Matt Schnell, who is a just not very good fighter. Like, I like Matt Schnell. He's like a crazy, crazy man. He has terrible views on economics, but he's just a crazy man that's super entertaining to fight. And I would watch that rematch like 5 times. But the sort of guy who gives opportunities to just, end him. Rogerio Bontorin, which a lot of people thought he lost because he more or less just got smothered. It's just that Bontorin didn't do enough. And then, like, Kai Kara France back when he was, well, still not a especially great submission grappler. Tim Elliott, very bad defensive grappler. Like, that's the highlight of his career. It's guys who are going to present that ability to get submitted, or just a deeply uncomfortable level of, like, not being able to up their pace. And Moreno is just none of the above. Moreno is a guy who will fight at a high pace, who will defend, who will land really, really solid counters, who is going to take advantage of the opportunities, the openings that Royval presents with his chaotic style and very, very openness and no real regard for defense. So, yeah, Moreno by submission. He's a minus 270 to minus 310 favorite. Royval plus 210 to plus 240. I have those written down from the other night. I will quickly see if that's changed. It's getting a little wider. I'm seeing minus 310 for Moreno now as, like, the high end. Oh, no, that was already where it was. Okay. So, yeah, about the same. I wouldn't imagine it's changed a lot. It's just been a couple hours. Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. This is a weird fight. Like, I can't escape a weird vibe here. Because, like, rewind the clock back to when this fight was originally booked. And Ortega got hurt during the fight. And we ended up with a... what was it, like I forget if it was termed a technical knockout, technical submission. What was the terminology for it? Just as win by shoulder injury. Anyways, I picked Ortega to win that fight because I was like, Rodriguez is vulnerable to getting taken down and, having some chaotic moments, kind of similar to, a little similar to Brandon Royval, just with way more physical gifts, basically. And I'm like, Ortega will at some point make him pay for that because he can hit pretty hard and he can get the back. And, like, if he gets your back, it's over. And, like, Rodriguez gives up his back pretty frequently. or at least dominant grappling positions without too much of a problem. And you just can't do that against Ortega. And Ortega hasn't fought since then. And yet somehow I feel different. I feel like Ortega's become washed while being injured. I can't place it. I legitimately cannot place it in my brain as to why I feel this way, but it's just like, it's this gut feeling that the ideas haven't really changed. Like, we've seen Rodriguez since, beat Josh Emmett, but lose to Volkanovski. Like, nothing's really changed. Like, he was takedownable in both of those fights. He was a risk taker in both of those fights. It's really just about Ortega being away that, like, for some reason has weaseled its way into my brain, into my gut, into my emotional thoughts on the fight, that he doesn't have it anymore. And it's weird. I don't really know what to do with that other than pick Yara by TKO, but I don't know. Yara Rodriguez is the favorite, minus 140 to minus 175. That's a bettable line. And Ortega's plus 120 to plus 140. That's also a bettable line. On the first fight, I don't like betting on Moreno at those odds, but like you have to bet on Moreno. I don't know how Royval wins. Daniel Selhuber versus Francisco Prado. I thought Prado was going down to 145. Am I thinking of someone else on that one? Anyways, Selhuber, despite what the fight with Trey Ogden had me thinking for a long time, because it was basically like he went out there and just got neutralized by Ogden. I was like, oh boy, that is not good. That is bad. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And then he's not had that happen again in two fights since. I think that, like, realistically speaking, Selhuber is a guy that if you give opportunities to and you give openings to and you're aggressive and you're offensive against, he will respond in kind. He will look for the openings and capitalize on them and do some pretty decent counterpunching and just kind of take you to school, because he's 6'1", 77-inch reach at 155. Might be the longest reach at 155. It's probably Jalen Turner is probably the answer, but it's up there. 77 inches is like for comparison purposes, that's a longer reach than like Johnny Eblin, who's fighting at 185 has. Prado is like, athletic, explosive, fast, powerful, and all that stuff. Like there's a great base attributes to like build on. But like at the same time, that's not really what Selhuber tends to struggle with. Selhuber tends to struggle with like people who just kind of paralyze the fight. Prado doesn't do that. Prado's aggressive. Prado's a little crazy in the head. Selhuber will get his openings, and we should have a fun fight. Selhuber by decision is my pick. He is a minus 270 to minus 290 favorite. Prado plus 215 to plus 230. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Ricky Turcios. I don't really like doing this in Mexico. I get why. Rosas Jr., of course, Mexican-American. Obviously a guy they're trying to push, and a guy who has a great deal of like social media interest in him right now. I don't know if that really translates to the Mexican market all that much, but hey, whatever. I want to pick Rosas here because he has a higher ceiling. Turcios is never going to be good. Turcios is just actively like going all over the place with like how he develops. His striking's quite poor. But my guy doesn't get submitted easily and scrambles really, really well. He is team alpha male after all. Doesn't have the greatest defensive wrestling, don't get me wrong, but like, can he just kind of do what Christian Rodriguez did, which is survive, make Rosas give up energy, make Rosas get tired, because everything Rosas does is like maximum effort, and we're at altitude? I'm going with Turcios. And it's not that I want to see Raul Rosas Jr. fail. I just think he's come in too raw, too young to the UFC. He doesn't know how to control his adrenaline. He doesn't know how to control his gas tank. Like, I don't think he has a bad gas tank. I just think he adrenaline dumps. I think he goes too Crazy. And if you look at Turcios's losses, they tend to be people who can capitalize on the fact that he doesn't strike well. Rosas is a bad striker, and his wins are over guys who just can't physically resist him. Turcios kind of can. Like Christian Rodriguez could. Christian Rodriguez is not a great athlete. Christian Rodriguez is a notably weak athlete, actually, and also someone who has a hard time cutting weight. I honestly think this is Turcios' to win, and he's the underdog at plus 176 to plus 190. I'm going to be betting on that. Minus 218 and minus 245 on Rosas Jr. I legitimately do not like this matchmaking from the UFC. I don't. It's not that Turcios doesn't make any sense. It's just you're putting up a guy who has had cardio issues in the past, has had adrenaline dump issues in the past, and you're asking him to fight at altitude against a guy who will put a pace up, who will counter wrestle, who will scramble, who is tiring to fight. I'm going with Turcios. Not going to be surprised if Rosas puts him in a body bag because it's not very good, but still. A fight I like a lot more, although the betting line for it makes no sense, because Yasmin Hauergui, who I am picking, is a minus 500 to minus 550 favorite against Sam Hughes, plus 160, plus 400. Hauergui's coming off a loss where she got knocked out by Denise Gomes. Don't get me wrong, Sam Hughes is not Denise Gomes. For better and worse. For better in the fact that I think she's actually a better fighter, a more well-rounded fighter, more adaptive fighter. But for worse in the sense that Gomes does hit really, really, really hard. It's just, I don't know, like that kind of loss can shake someone whose game is kind of reliant on taking abuse and fighting in the pocket almost exclusively, like Hauergui's is. Hauergui is a chin reliant fighter, and that chin has been cracked. Is there going to be hesitation? Is there going to be nervousness? Is there going to be problems with being that same kind of fighter? Or is she going to learn to be a little bit better? Or is she going to be unaffected and is going to be the same fighter who comes out there and does her thing? Like, there's a little bit like too much of an unknown there to go like minus 500. And I know why it is. Like, Sam Hughes on paper looks not very good. She's 8-5 after all. That's a pretty poor record for the UFC. But you look at who she's lost to: Pierre Rodriguez, Luana Pinheiro, Loma Lukbumi, Tisha Torres, Vanessa Dompolis. That's a really good list. It's a very, very good list. That's like a very athletic list too. A very technical list in their own ways. So I think Hughes will test Hauergui in a lot of ways. Like, she's super tough. She's hard to finish. She can strike. She can grapple. She can wrestle. She can scramble. She adapts. She listens to her coaches really, really well. And it's not like Hauergui presents the most like layered questions here. I'm still going to pick Hauergui. I just think people have gone insane with the betting. That like a minus 500 line has come into play here. It's very, very weird. But yeah, Hauergui by decision, just a little bit more athletic. It's a little bit harder. Has a more defined game, but a game that she's pretty capable of enforcing on somebody and making them do. Similar reach, similar heights in play in here. Manuel Torres versus Chris Duncan. Two true outcome fight here. Torres is a pretty big hitter, pretty big dude, just in general, 5'10", 73-inch reach at lightweight, quite big. Big hitter, scrappy. And for Duncan, scrappy, not terribly athletic. Like, either Manuel Torres is going to come out here and he's going to plonk Chris Duncan, which definitely can happen because Duncan does not have the greatest defense. Has been known to get hit by big hitters, even like Yanal Ashmouz. If he didn't screw up his arm, probably could have beaten Chris Duncan, realistically. Chris Duncan, also a guy who, got knocked out Contender Series by Vyacheslav Borshev, which is his only loss for the record, but like a guy who has been clipped hard in a lot of his fights. Torres will do that very early, and either he'll finish him, option A, or option B, we'll end up going to like a decision with Chris Duncan winning or like finishing Torres late. Like that's how this fight's going to go. I'm going to pick Torres to go knock him out, but I am going to be cheering for Chris Duncan because I love my fundamentally not terribly athletic dudes. I feel a kinship with them. They have the insanity to do what I couldn't do, and I respect that. Like I said, Torres minus 160 to minus 190, Duncan at plus 130 to plus 160. Both of those are very bettable lines. Christian Coenes versus Ronnie Barcelos. I'm worried about the decline of Ronnie Barcelos. He's like, what, 2-4, 1-4 in his last 5? There you go. But like, he's lost to Kyler Phillips, Umar Nurmagomedov, Timur Valiev, Victor Henry. These are all much, much, much better fighters than Quinones. They all have, with the exception of Henry, way more physical horsepower than Quinones. Quinones is like a slightly more athletic version of Henry, but like what Henry was able to do to him was the incredibly layered techniques and feint game that Henry has, and just the raw, constant volume that Henry puts on you. Like Henry is a miserable fighter to fight. And while Quinones has like elements of that same style, elements of that volume, more power probably because Henry doesn't hit that hard, more speed, I don't think it's physicality that really troubles Barcelos. He should just be able to put up his power game. He's a power striker. He's a power wrestler. Just go out there, hit Quinones really, really hard, set up the takedown, do your thing, pick up a decision. Boom, there you go. It's a tightrope, though, because he is 1-4 in his last 5. He is 36 years old. This is bantamweight. That is old. Maybe this is the moment. But there's no reach advantage for Quinones to work with. He's not the range striker that Victor Henry is. He's not the athlete Kyler Phillips is. He's not the athlete Umar Nurmagomedov is. He's not the athlete that Timur Valiev is. I got to go with Barcelos. But if you're feeling Quinones, him at plus 142 to plus 160, I don't know. That's not a big enough underdog, I think, honestly. Barcelos minus 175 to minus 200. Jesus Aguilar versus Matej Manoka. I got to go with Manoka here. Don't get me wrong. I understand that he's 0-2, and that's been like kind of the he's not actually all that good. Blah 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 blah. He's under delivered in the UFC. Here's the thing. Dude got thrown in there with Javid Basharat, who is a nightmare, and Nate Maness, who is a super awkward to fight against kind of guy because of how tall he is. Aguilar is neither of those. He's a 5'4", 62-inch reach guy. He is a small flyweight in terms of height and reach. Mendonça should be able to go out there, use his 9.5 inches of reach, oh my lord, to, work behind a power striking game, put together that like classic shoot-a-box style, kick him, jab him, straight power shots. And Aguilar is like not some kind of like great wrestler or whatever. Like his best thing is like, dude is a neck hunter. He's got a bunch of like submissions and then like a win over Shannon Ross, which means absolutely nothing. I'm going with Mendonça by decision. I am very confident on betting on him at minus 125 to minus 152. Aguilar plus 105 to plus 123. I don't get it. I've broken down Edgar Chairez versus Daniel Lacerda 3 times. I'm not doing it again. I pick Chairez every single time. Lacerda is a meme fighter who is a guy who looks like he learned how to fight by watching DVDs. Shout out to Byron, who last night on the TeamSpeak came up with that line, and I'm using it here. Chairez by submission or TKO, whichever actually presents itself. He's a minus 350 to minus 410 favorite. Lacerda plus 265 to plus 320. Pardon me. Claudio Puelles versus Fares Ziam. I'm going with Fares Ziam here by decision. There was a moment where I did buy into Claudio Puelles. I really did. That early 5 fight winning streak he had that was highlighted by the submission of Clay Guida, where it's like, I'm tall, I like to kick, and I can do all that. I am the tri-star fighter, but from Peru. And And then we just kind of watched Dan Hooker just smash that. And don't get me wrong, Dan Hooker is a very, very, very good fighter. He's a far better fighter than Fares Ziam. Far better. But I think it recalled us that Puelos has rather poor defense. His takedowns come from him shooting from his knees a lot of the time. That's just not going to be effective. And a lot of his success is going to have to come from just kind of pulling guard. Kind of Ryan Hall, Carlos Vera-esque, actually. But with athleticism and youth. While Fares Ziam has his own significant problems, he is a 6'1" dude with a 75-inch reach. He's very, very tall, very, very long. He can keep Puelos at range. He can probably work the body. He can work everything you would want. Puelos is not Terrence McKinney, who beat Fares Ziam. He is not Don Match, who beat Fares Ziam. I can't shake this idea that Ziam lacks durability, but I just can't see Puelos being the guy to bring the storm to him. Realistically, he's not that high paced of a fighter. He's not that impactful of a takedown artist. He's not that physical powerhouse that is going to make Ziam uncomfortable. So yeah, Fares Ziam by decision. He is a -210 to -230 favorite, plus 170 to plus 180 on Puelos. Sorry if I'm sniffling. I got a little bit of a cold stomach bug going on here. It's a bit weird. Luis Rodriguez versus Dennis Bondar. I'm not super familiar with Rodriguez. I watched his Dana White Contender Series fight. I've seen some highlights from elsewhere. I don't feel like I have any good grasp on him, but he seems like a decent athlete. He seems like a guy who, has some level of boxing game, some level of grappling, and that feels like enough because Dennis Bondar, and I said this, you can go all the way back to when Dennis Bondar debuted in the UFC, and I was like, has anyone thought that a guy who has whose opponents have a record of 63-48 before he fought them, and a complete lack of physicality, got bullied by a guy who doesn't seem like a good athlete, who doesn't do anything cool, and then he went out there and got clinch bullied by Malcolm Gordon? Not picking him ever. Rodriguez by decision because he doesn't have a really deep way of finishing Bondar, and Bondar is, I don't know, I guess defensively sound enough and hard-nosed enough not to just get instantly tapped or instantly knocked out or anything, but he just will never win, honestly. Rodriguez is -111 to -130, and Bondar +110 to -113. I'm not interested in betting on the fight because I'm picking someone to beat Bondar. And it's not about them. It's about my just thoughts on how bad Bondar is. I just don't know Rodriguez all that well. So I wouldn't touch it, but I don't know. How Bondar is still getting near even money odds is pretty confusing to me. Victor Altamirano versus Felipe Dos Santos. Should be a fun fight, but the dynamic is pretty simple here. We have two high volume guys who bring the chaos, bring the craziness to their striking. They're creative. And one has all the physical edges. And that's Dos Santos. Altamirano is a notably not super athletic guy. He needs a guy Carlos Candelaria to beat, who is similarly lackluster athletically, or Daniel Lacerda, who we talked about earlier, being a meme fighter who just breaks. Dos Santos is neither of those things. He gave Manel Kape a really, really, really hard time on short notice. I think he regularly hurts people, even if he doesn't finish them. He is a pretty good striker, like I said, pretty good athlete, pretty good wrestler, pretty good grappler. Altamirano doesn't have that obvious gap in his game that he can capitalize on and game plan around. And on top of that, he's just not as good of an athlete. So as much as I hate to give it to just the athletic cheater, that's what it is. Altamirano is doing the best he can with what he's got, but what he's got is just not much. Dos Santos is a -298 to -330 favorite. That is prohibitive. And Altamirano +230 to +240. And then the least sense-making fight of the night, Muhammad Naimov versus Eric Silva, number one for its location on the card, because Naimov, I know we didn't like the fight with Nathaniel Wood. I know we felt like he got away with cheating a lot. I know but he won. He beat Nathaniel Wood, and he's getting Eric Silva. And no, this is not some late replacement fight. This is the only booking. There's no canceled fight with Naimov for this card. There's no prior existing booking. Like I keep pulling up a Tapology page, expecting to see like this is not the plan, but this is the plan somehow. Eric Silva is actually someone who, if he was like a decade younger, I would be actually pretty big on, because he is pretty athletic. He is like pretty crazy aggressive. I like it. I love it. But he's 36 years old and like super raw. Like there's nothing to him. Like there's a decent takedown game. Don't get me wrong. But like there's no setup for the takedown game. There's not a great grappling game to back it up. There's a pretty bad striking game on top of that. Naimov is hard to take down. He's a good striker. He can keep range pretty well. He should just pick Silva apart and either TKO him or sub him. I put sub in there because Silva tends to get subbed, but like it feels like Naimov should just TKO him. Naimov is a prohibitive favorite at minus 460 to minus 575, and Silva is not a big enough underdog for me to touch with a 10-foot pole at plus 320 to plus 425. That's the card, top to bottom. It's pretty good. Very few debuting fighters, which is nice. I think it's just Lazy Boy Rodriguez, Luis Rodriguez, is the only one, right? Yeah, and the biggest fighters on the card are 155. This should be like really, really fun, even though a lot of the outcomes are a little bit simplistic in breakdown. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a dope card. Really looking forward to it. Excited for it. Probably will miss part of it doing racing commentary, but hey, it is what it is. And for the next UFC card, what do we got? What is next? Is it the pay-per-view? Is it $299? No. Oh God, no. It's Rosenstruck versus Gaziev. Okay. I'll be notably less charitable to that fight, because the third fight on the night is Eric Anders versus Jamie Pickett. That's bad. There's some good stuff. I'm looking forward to Match Dell, Steve Urseg. If it happens, Mokaev, Alex Perez is a good fight. I got nothing else for that card. Ooh. Oh, that's bad. It's very, very bad. It's very, very bad. Anyways, get ready for a lot of moaning when I break that card down. But hey, at least we got Bellator this week. We got a really solid fight night. And then we go into crap. There you go. Check out the links down below in the description. You can check out the Discord server with the MMA simulator, as well as my various gaming stuff and social medias. Please reach out. I would love to talk to you, the people who enjoy the sound of my voice.